Welcome back to Game Talk 24/7. I'm your host, Josh Cunningham. Before we get to the video, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button down below and like the video. It really means a lot. It really helps out the channel, and I appreciate it more than you know. Also, don't be afraid to comment down below. Without further ado, let's talk sports. Hey guys, welcome back to Game Talk 24/7. Today is December 2nd. It's Tuesday. We had a great weekend of college sports, but due to the holidays last weekend and Thanksgiving, and also some of the crazy games we had in college football, and just all the talking I did with friends and family, my voice is a little sore this week. So this week we're just going to do 2 shorter videos instead of doing a couple longer videos where I give my takes and opinions. We're going to do some short videos. Today we're going to be reviewing The Many Lives of Lane Kiffin, which is an ESPN E60 documentary. And it's really relevant right now because Lane Kiffin just left Ole Miss to go become the head coach at LSU. In The Many Lives of Lane Kiffin, it's a great documentary. Whether you know a lot about Lane Kiffin or don't, you learn some insights to his mind, when it comes to him leaving former jobs and staying at former jobs. And also you can see kind of just who Lane Kiffin was before Ole Miss and how that kind of, you see that now when he's going to LSU. In The Many Lives of Lane Kiffin, you start out with him being a quarterback and then going and kind of just getting, like, he's going to get kicked off the team, but he becomes a grad assistant on that same team, and he becomes an assistant wide receivers coach. And then he goes to become multiple different assistant coaches throughout his career before he ends up at USC under Pete Carroll. And then that's his first biggest job in college football, is being an assistant coach under Pete Carroll, who was the head coach at USC at the time. And that eventually led to him getting the job with the Oakland Raiders, which didn't end too well. And then he got the job at Tennessee and became the head coach at Tennessee. And we saw how that only went and lasted a year, and they rioted and almost burnt down his house. They didn't almost burn down his house, but they were throwing bricks at his house. The streets rioted. Tennessee fans were going crazy. And understandably, because Lane Kiffin signed there, wasn't even there for a full year. He's only there for a full season. And then he goes to USC to become the head coach at USC and go where he got his start in college football at what was once a premier program under Pete Carroll. Sorry, I'm thinking of the MLB player Corbin Carroll sometimes. Pete Carroll, who was a phenomenal college coach who also made some mistakes, and also a decent NFL coach at times. But you see all the missed steps, the mistakes, the wrong steps that Lane Kiffin takes throughout this documentary. In the documentary, they really highlight all of the departures of places. They highlight how at USC he got fired on the tarmac for not succeeding when he had a 10 or 11 win season a couple years before that. And you see how even though the sanctions that got imposed on them from all of what happened during the Pete Carroll era, that didn't affect their decision to fire him, because he showed how he could still win even with those sanctions against him, and they fired him on the tarmac. You see how he then goes to Alabama to become an analyst and an offensive coordinator at one point. And Nick Saban fires him right before the national championship because Lane Kiffin can't be the head coach at FAU and the offensive coordinator at Alabama at both times. And while most people would stay and do their coordinating duties, Lane Kiffin struggled. He was late to meetings. He was calling plays in the semifinal that they never practiced. He was literally calling plays that they never practiced. And so Nick Saban fired him and had Steve Sarkisian call the plays, who's now the head coach at Texas, and became their permanent offensive coordinator, I think, right after that. Had him call plays in the national championship and fired Lane Kiffin right before the national championship, because Lane Kiffin, hey, you're going to FAU, and apparently you're not focused enough to know that you're calling plays that you didn't practice. You're also not showing up to meetings on time, so sorry, but we got to cut you loose. They cut him loose, he goes to FAU, and he has a tremendous 3 years at FAU, does really well. And Ole Miss is like, fine, we'll be the ones to risk getting bit by the snake, and we'll take Lane Kiffin. No one else will take him, even though he's shown he can be a decent coach at times, and he's a premier candidate. No one else is going to take him, though, because of the career he set for himself. And you really see that in the documentary, how there's teams that just won't take him. There's jobs that are open that just don't want him. Ole Miss said, we'll take him. We've never been a premier program. We want to get there. He gets to Ole Miss. Ole Miss was his 10th job in college football. The documentary shows us that he bounced around for many different jobs, just like his dad to an extent. His dad, Lane Kiffin, who is a legend when it comes to Tampa 2 and it comes to just defense in general. He called and worked on the defensive staffs for 6 different NFL teams. So just kind of like his dad, he hopped around from team to team to team to team. And when he got to Ole Miss, up until this past season, everyone thought Lane Kiffin's going to stay there. He finally found his home. Even though if you know Lane Kiffin and you know his story, especially what you see in the documentary, you know, Lane Kiffin's never satisfied. He always wants the greener grass that's on the other side of the fence. He always wants to slither his way into someone else's yard. He's the snake that keeps biting, and eventually a school like Ole Miss is going to get bit. Just like USC did, just like Tennessee did. Even though he got fired at USC, Lane Kiffin got bit by USC, I guess. But Tennessee got bit, for an example. Alabama got bit, even though he got fired there. There was reason to be fired. There was reason to him being fired. FAU didn't get bit because he left a mid-major to go to an SEC school like Ole Miss. That's expected. Everyone expects that. Everyone sees that. Everyone knows that. And so when you see that and you see him going to Ole Miss, everyone's like, okay, let's see, can Lane Kiffin rebuild his reputation? Until this past month or two and the LSU job opening up and then him taking the LSU job, everyone thought maybe he did rebuild his reputation. That's what this whole documentary is about, is him rebuilding his reputation, showing the insights of Lane Kiffin's life, what he does, the hard decisions he had to make, and why he made those decisions. And while most of those decisions are not decisions you or me would make, they're decisions that he made and he has to live with to this day. And so you see all the struggles that he went through throughout his coaching career to get to Ole Miss. And he gets to Ole Miss, and he becomes probably one of the best, if not the best, coaches in Ole Miss history. And this past season is the best, probably the most would consider, I would myself would consider this the best season in Ole Miss football history. They are 11-1 and in the college football playoff with a chance to win compete for a national championship, maybe even win it. They're probably not gonna win now because now they don't have Lane Kiffin, and they probably aren't gonna have some of their offensive coaching staff with them. Pete Golding got elevated to the head coach, but you see how Lane Kiffin he kind of brings chaos wherever he leaves. Throughout that documentary, you see when he leaves Tennessee, chaos. He leaves USC, gets fired on a tarmac. Alabama, chaos, gets fired right before the national championship. FAU is the only place that didn't have chaos. Even when he got fired from the Oakland Raiders, chaos. The owner said Lane was a liar and all this. Chaos. Just follows Lane Kiffin wherever it goes. So now the question that you beg is, how long will Lane Kiffin be at LSU? And when will the chaos follow? Because, again, we've seen Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss for 6 years. That's the longest he's been, almost the longest he's been at any place. And so when you see that, you're like, man, is Lane Kiffin really going to stay? No. He's just waiting for the right opportunity. He almost left for Auburn. In the documentary, he talks about how he almost left for Auburn. He was really going to take that job a couple of years ago, but his daughter convinced him to stay at Ole Miss. And then last year, they talk about, I don't know if they talk about this in the documentary, but people have talked about on ESPN how he was really interested in the Florida job last year if they fired Billy Napier, but they didn't. And this year, when it comes to the Florida and LSU job, the LSU job was a lot better. But this documentary just goes through the many lives, what they call it, of Lane Kiffin. And it sure shows how Lane Kiffin has many lives. It shows how, on the surface at Ole Miss, at FAU, Lane Kiffin looked like a great guy, a great coach, someone that everyone loves and respects. And I'm not saying Lane Kiffin's a bad guy. But then you really dive deep into the weeds, and it shows when it comes to his career, Lane Kiffin will do anything to get to the top. He'll leave whatever school he has to. He'll stab anybody in the back to get to the top. While he might not have stabbed, per se, a colleague in the back, he stabbed Tennessee in the back when he left to go to USC. That's just the story. He did. I mean, when he returned to Tennessee for the first time with Ole Miss, they threw stuff at him. They threw golf balls at him. He even in the documentary joked about how he's happy that they won, but he's really happy that they didn't get hit by golf balls. Or he was happy that, he was really happy that he didn't get by any of the golf balls because they were throwing stuff at him. And so you see how Lane Kiffin affects every school he goes to, and he affects wherever he leaves, and it's drama filled with chaos. Again, the documentary, The Many Lives of Lane Kiffin by ESPN, and an E60, one of ESPN's documentaries, 60-minute documentaries. It is a great documentary. I recommend you checking out whether you know a lot about Lane Kiffin or don't, especially with what just happened with Lane Kiffin and Lane Kiffin going to LSU. If you want to just kind of see a more drama-fied and documentary status of the history of Lane Kiffin, not just from Lane Kiffin's eyes, but you see it from other people's eyes. While it may be painted to rebuild his reputation, you can still learn some of the things like what happened when he left Tennessee, what happened when he left USC. You can still learn about some of those things and see about some of those things in that documentary. It's a great documentary. I would give it probably an 8.5 out of 10. I'm only not giving it a 10 out of 10 because it's not the best sports documentary I've seen. I've seen a bunch of others. It's not the best, but it's definitely not the worst. It's very intriguing, and I recommend that you all should watch it. It's a great documentary. And again, Lane Kiffin to LSU. Who saw that coming? Well, mostly everybody did. Once he wasn't extending with Ole Miss and getting more money, even though Ole Miss said they would give him however much money he wanted, they would match the same offer that LSU did. So, again, Lane Kiffin to LSU. It's crazy. Lane Kiffin's back to being the villain of college football like he was back when he left Tennessee to go to USC, and then from USC to Alabama, and Alabama to FAU. Lane Kiffin's back to being the villain of college football, while from Alabama to FAU and USC to Alabama might not have been as big of stories as Tennessee to USC. Lane Kiffin's back to being that villain of college football that everyone knows, and we all love villains in college football. We like seeing their stories play out. We like seeing how it goes. And so it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out for Lane Kiffin. LSU, did he make the right choice, or should he stay to Ole Miss? We'll find out. That's Game Talk 24/7. Thank you guys for watching.